Get started. So good evening, everyone. And for our two readers, please speak slowly and be close to your microphone. And welcome to our bi-monthly Foundations meeting of the Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. We are glad you are here. My name is Trish and I am an alcoholic.
Hello, Trish. I'm Miss Lisa and I'm an alcoholic.
And let's open this meeting with a moment of silence followed by the set-aside prayer. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself. The 12 steps, the big book, the meetings, my disease. But most especially, God, please set aside everything I think I know about you, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth. And our AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Lisa?
Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group Mission Statement. To carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous through our group, to carry the message of the Big Book to treated and untreated alcoholics, to help them find the spiritual solution outlined in our basic text and join the first 100 to become recovered. There is no cure for alcoholism, but we can become recovered with the AA book and 1940s style Big Book sponsorship. That is the purpose of this group. May you join us on the road of happy destiny.
And just a little introduction on what a Foundations meeting is. Hi, Chris. A Foundations study is a great meeting for people who are new. It's also a great meeting for people who work with those who are new. We take a hop, skip, and jump through all 12 steps with a whole lot of focus on step 1 to help the newcomer recognize and make that determination. Am I an alcoholic or am I not? Why am I here? We hit a lot of hot spots in the book to help them make that decision. And then we touch a little bit on each one of the other steps. And then we open up at the end for questions and comments. Did I miss anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Spiritual experience.
Yeah. So, Lisa, go ahead and kick us off.
From the preface, because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left largely untouched.
We want them to know what alcoholism is, what the solution is, and how to take the action that is necessary to avoid death or insanity by drinking, or how to get from the problem to the solution.
Now turn to the forward to the first edition, page XIII. And Nikki, could you read the first paragraph and then we will dissect it?
Okay, the fourth edition forward?
The first edition.
The first edition, okay.
Page XIII.
Okay. All right, forward to the first edition. This is a forward as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. We, Alcoholic Anonymous, are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. It is important that we remain
Oh,
anonymous.
stop there. Just the
Sorry.
first paragraph. That's okay.
Okay, and Nikki, read the first line again.
We of Alcoholic Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body.
Thank you. The first sentence tells us who authored the basic text for Alcoholics Anonymous.
And Ted, please read the second line.
To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book.
Thank you. The second sentence tells us why they went to the trouble to publish the basic text.
And Nikki, read the third line.
For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincingly that no further authentication will be necessary.
Thank you. The third sentence suggests the big book is all we will ever need to be successful in sobriety.
And Ted, the fourth and fifth lines, please.
Wait a minute.
That's right.
I'm
We
sorry.
think.
For them, we hope that these pages will prove so convincing that further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help us, everyone, to better understand the alcoholic.
Yep. And one more. Many do not.
Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person.
Thank you. The fourth and fifth sentences tell us that the big book is also for those who care about us.
And Nikki, read the sixth line.
Many do not, okay. As besides, we are sure there are ways of living has its advantages for all.
Thank you. The sixth sentence is supported by the fact that the big book has given birth to over 200 anonymous fellowships that have nothing to do with drinking.
That's so true. Our Roman numeral pages will be found from the fourth edition. Pages in the third edition will be one page earlier. On page XIV, the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking, traditions 3 and 5. We have lost our understanding of honest by the time we decide to come to AA, so that requirement has been eliminated. But if a person is serious about living sober, they better have an honest desire to stop drinking and be willing to follow the directions in the big book.
Absolutely. The foreword to the second edition gives a historical account of the first 20 years of our history. How Bill found Dr. Bob, how they got busy looking for other alcoholics to try to help, how their success attracted the attention of some of our leading citizens, how we received some very favorable publicity, Jack Alexander's article, how the onslaught of new prospects forced Bill to develop the traditions, and then we hammer the statement on page XX.
Of those who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder of those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Other thousands came to a few AA meetings, and at first they decided they didn't want the program. But great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. So about 75% plus got sober and remained that way. In the early 1940s, the Cleveland groups were running at a 92% success rate using big book sponsorship.
Then Bill published the 12 and 12 in 1953. And by 1965, our success rate had dropped to 50%. Unfortunately, many newcomers are encouraged to try to use the 12 and 12 as their source of directions. Bill W. was the principal author of the Big Book and the sole author of the 12 and 12. On page 17 of the 12 and 12, Bill stated, the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, became the basic text of the fellowship, and it still is. This present volume proposes to broaden and deepen the understanding of the 12 steps as first written in the earlier work. By saying this, Bill indicates that the directions for the 12 steps are only in the Big Book, not in the 12 and 12.
Then, in the late 1960s, we started discussion participation meetings that failed to stick to our singleness of purpose, so that by 1980, we had dropped to 33%. The result of which was we started ignoring the practice of focusing on our solution, and we drifted into group therapy. For recent years, our success rate has decreased to what appears to be less than 5% for those finding as much as 5 years of sobriety.
While there has been a dramatic change in our fellowship, the program has remained unchanged. Consequently, the 4th edition reads the same as the 1st edition.
So we're going to flip over to page 30, and Ted, I believe it's your turn. We're going to go to the middle paragraph, and you're going to read 2 sentences, and they start with, "We learned we had to."
We learned we had to fully conclude to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery.
Thank you. In our heart of hearts, we know that we are the victims of a killer disease, or we must know that we are the victims of a killer disease before we can begin recovery.
Absolutely. And Nikki, return to the doctor's opinion, page XXVII in the 4th edition. The first 2 paragraphs. The doctor writes,
The doctor's opinion, we of Alcoholic Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested.
Start
medical-
at, hold on, Nikki, are you on XXVII?
XXV only, VII.
VII,
Got it, got it.
where it
okay.
says the doctor writes.
One sec. XXVII.
Yes, 2 I's.
Right.
Not, okay, got it. Okay, the doctor writes, the subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I say this after many years' experience as a medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholics and drug addiction.
Thank you. We identified who Dr. Silkworth was and how he wound up at Towns Hospital, how his opinion opened the door for recovery. Until we understand a problem, we cannot find a solution. I use an example of walking out to my car, putting the key in the ignition, and the damn thing won't start. Problem. I can sit on my butt and talk about the car not starting until hell freezes over, but that will get me nowhere. I look under the hood and see that the battery cable has corroded. I know what the problem is, so the solution becomes very evident. I need a new battery cable, but that doesn't solve the problem. I still must take the action necessary to obtain a new cable, replace the bad one, and now I'm on my way. Understand the problem, know what the solution is, and then take the action to make that solution a reality.
And Ted, from the first paragraph on page XXVII, We present the allergy which makes us powerless over alcohol. Read that first sentence.
XXVII. We believe,
Mhm.
and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, and that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker.
Thank you. The phenomenon of craving, which is the manifestation of the allergy.
And Nikki, the last paragraph, that same page, XXVIII, is where we find the initial information regarding the unmanageability, the alcoholic mind that cannot distinguish the truth from the false. And please read the whole paragraph starting with men and women drink.
Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, this cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over unless this person can experience an entire psychic change. This is very little hope of his recovery. Continue.
Go ahead, Lisa. You got another line there.
Oh, thought that was you. We carefully
Oh,
dissect the.
It was. I'm sorry. I'm used to be the other color. We carefully dissect the whole paragraph. First, what is the effect alcoholic men and women get from drinking alcohol?
Why is it so important that we have this spiritual event occur in our lives? Well, Dr. Silsworth said that we drink essentially because we like the effect produced by alcohol. What is the effect an alcoholic gets from drinking? When we alcoholics had a few drinks, we were amazed at the change in the way we thought and the way we felt. A few drinks produced an entire psychic change.
And now we're going to jump all the way up to page 83. And we're going to examine the 9-step promises in a whole new way. And we're going to begin each promise with the phrase, when I had a few drinks. So we're going to read each line in the first person in the past tense. So for example, the first promise would be, and everybody gets confused the first couple of times we do this. So the first promise would be, when I had a few drinks, if I was painstaking about this phase of my development, I would be amazed before I was halfway through. And Ted, could you give that second promise a shot, starting with when I had a few drinks?
When I had a few drinks, I'm going to know a new freedom and a new happiness.
Perfect.
Would you?
I sure did. And Nikki, can you take the next promise, please?
You said page 83.
Page 83.
Okay.
We're in the 9-step promises.
Okay.
Your sentence will be, we won't regret the past, but you're going to put in front of that, when I had a few drinks, I won't regret.
Okay. When I've had a few drinks, I will not regret
Uh-huh.
the past, nor wish to shut the door on it.
Perfect. Did you ever come out of a blackout in a place you hadn't planned on visiting, with people you hadn't planned on being with, and learned you had done some things you sure wish you hadn't done? And because of the guilt and remorse, it was to be a secret? And then go into a bar and have a few drinks and tell some stranger the whole story?
I certainly did.
Ted, come on in. You get
Oh,
the
me?
next one. Yep.
When we had a few drinks, we will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace.
Did you too find that serenity and peace of mind replace the turmoil with a few drinks?
Oh, yeah.
For a while.
And Nikki, the next one.
After having a few drinks, no matter how far down the scale I have gone, I will see how my experience can benefit others.
There you go. How willing were you to share your life story with some poor drunk who had just had a really bad experience?
Love to talk about how bad my life was.
And Ted? Go ahead, Ted. You get the next one.
Okay, and when I had a few drinks, that feel useless of self-pity will disappear.
Perfect.
With a few drinks, did you feel you just might really have a purpose in this world and feel sorry for those critters that didn't have what you had, although you just weren't too sure what it was you had?
Almost every time. And Nikki, the next one.
After having a few drinks, I will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in my fellows.
Perfect. Did a few drinks make you a little more interested in people, especially of the opposite sex?
Can I buy you a drink, honey?
And Ted?
After a few drinks, self-seeking will slip away.
Did a few drinks make you somewhat generous?
Drinks for everyone! Nikki?
After a few drinks, my whole attitude and outlook upon life will change.
Did a few drinks take you from a gray, gloomy day to one that was bright and hopeful?
From a shade of brown to rosy pink with just a couple.
Absolutely. And Ted?
After a few drinks, fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us.
Did you enjoy being in the company of people sober?
Leave me alone.
Did a few drinks diminish your concern for your financial difficulties?
How am I going to pay all these bills? I think I better have a couple of drinks to figure it out. And who are we on? Nikki?
After having a few drinks, I will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me.
Did you too find that you were able to think much more clearly and wisely with a few drinks?
You bet. I had answers to questions that hadn't even been asked yet.
Sure did. And okay, the unmanageability is clearly presented in the last sentence of that paragraph.
I will suddenly realize that booze is doing for me what I could not do for myself.
Absolutely. From the article, Ways to Stop Drinking, you can get some ideas of how we apply the information Dr. Silkworth proposed.
The newcomer is also reminded that they need be mindful of over-the-counter meds such as cough syrup, mouthwash, flavor extracts, etc., and that their healthcare providers should know that they are alcoholics so that the professionals will be mindful of what they prescribe. We emphasize that they themselves are responsible for their sobriety, so be honest with those who have a need to know. We should also be aware of supplements and the ingredients listed. Just because it says healthy doesn't mean it is safe for us. Some of the ingredients may trigger the craving. Some supplements do contain alcohol as a soluble base. No matter how long we have been sober, alcohol in any form can be deadly. It can be very easy to over-medicate when self-medicating.
Sure can. We have now helped the newcomers understand the problem. Now we are going to breeze through Bill's story, looking at the events that describe the progression of alcoholism in his life. So I'll give you a minute to flip back to page 2. And Ted, I'm going to have you read from the middle of the first paragraph, about 10 lines down from the top, one sentence starting with "though my drinking."
My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night.
Wrong one.
Oh, wrong line. Though my drinking was not yet. Page 2.
It's about 10 lines down from the top, Ted.
Oh.
Though my drinking was not yet.
Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife.
Perfect. Lois is now on his ass about his drinking.
And Nikki, page 3, the bottom of the page, the last sentence begins with, I began to be jittery.
I began to be jittery in the morning.
Thank you. Bill was beginning to be jittery in the morning.
And Ted, we're now flipping to page 5. The first sentence, and it starts with liquor ceased.
Liquor ceased to be a luxury and became a necessity.
Liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. He's lying about his drinking, hiding his bottles, etc.
And Nikki, on page 5, third paragraph, 4 sentences, starting with, then I got a promising business opportunity.
I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished.
Thank you. Bill lost an opportunity to make some money because he drank.
And Bill, still on page 5, in the fourth, or in Ted, still on page 5, fourth paragraph, 4 sentences, the first of which is, I woke up.
I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw that I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever.
Bill
Before
made
that,
up his mind never to touch another drop.
And Nikki, page 5, 5th paragraph, 3 sentences, starting with shortly afterward.
Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know.
Bill returned home drunk.
And Ted, we're going to flip over now to page 7, the end of the first full paragraph, 1 sentence starting with best of all.
Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally.
Thank you. Bill met Dr. Silkworth and learned what was wrong with him.
And Nikki, page 8, the first full paragraph, 4 sentences, starting with quicksand stretched.
Page 8.
The first full paragraph, 4 sentences, starting with quicksand stretched.
Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master.
Bill surrendered to the problem, step 1.
We use the next paragraph to exemplify the simplicity of our program. Ted, could you read that first sentence that starts with trembling?
Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man.
Thank you. And then that last sentence, still staying with Ted, starting with I was to know.
I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes.
Thank you. A wonderful life as the result of having taken the action Ebby prescribed for him.
And Nikki, page 10 and 11. The last paragraph on page 10 and the first paragraph on page 11, starting with when they talked of a God personal to me.
They talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength and direction. I became irritated, and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ, I conceded the certainty of my great man not too closely followed by who claimed him.
Keep going.
His moral teachings most excellent.
One more
Keep go-
sentence.
Oh, God. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bill's rebellion at the idea of a spiritual solution, identifying him as a hard-nosed agnostic.
And Ted, flipping to page 12, the second paragraph, 2 sentences starting with my friend.
My friend suggested what seemed like a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God?
Thank you. The freedom and responsibility we are given to develop an idea of God that we can begin to bet our lives on.
We then explain the simplicity of step 2 by the fact that Bill saw his old drinking buddy, who was supposedly in the nut house for alcoholic insanity, sober. Both of them had been powerless over alcohol, but Ebby was sober and Bill was going to die. Ebby had found the power that Bill was unaware of. Ebby gave Bill hope, the beginning of coming to believe. From that hope, Bill finally became willing to try Ebby's plan of action. Again, the idea of step 2.
And flipping to page 13, and Nikki, we're back to you. In the first paragraph, the first sentence, at the hospital.
At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time.
Thank you. Entering Towns Hospital on December 11th, 1934, going into DTs. Taking step 3 on the 3rd day of his sobriety. Ebby visiting Bill in the hospital on the 4th and 5th days to help Bill take the action Ebby had learned to apply in his life, the result of which was a spiritual experience. Bill left the hospital on December 18th, 1934 at the end of 7 days and lived 36 years without taking another drink. We are here because of the action Bill took, not the meetings he attended.
Absolutely. We now identify the meaning of step 1. Powerless, because of the allergy. Unmanageability, due to the mind that cannot remember that we have that allergy. It can only remember the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks.
Relieving the feeling of restlessness, irritability, and discontentedness.
Therefore, we are powerless over our body and powerless over our mind where alcohol is concerned. We are screwed.
Yes, we are. And Nikki, page 24, please. And reading the italics or the squiggly lines in that second paragraph, starting with the fact is.
Fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink.
Thank you.
And Ted, on page 43, the last paragraph, starting with once more.
Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except for in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your participation. I'm going to mute the two of you, and you'll be able to come in later on for comments and questions. So thank you for your service. Okay, from the hope of being a recovered alcoholic, or of hearing a recovered alcoholic tell their story of what they were like, what happened, and what they are like now, or reading the 44 personal stories in the Big Book is the beginning of step 2. If lack of power is the problem, then a power greater than ourselves must be the solution. And we see the recovered alcoholic has found that power. It takes no great mind to see that if lack of power or powerlessness is my problem, then a power greater than myself must be the solution. Once I can see that, I am faced with a very simple decision. Am I or am I not willing to follow the clear-cut directions for recovery? But I need someone who knows how to do this. For example, a sponsor.
So the simplicity of step 3 is to turn my will and my life over to the care of God of my understanding. I learned how to turn my will and my life over to this power by taking steps 4 through 7. But I need a sponsor who has a working knowledge of taking the steps as directed in the Big Book, who can guide me through this process.
To determine if you have made a good choice in sponsors, it is pretty easy to tell. If they suggest for you to open your Big Book or offer to read with you from page XI and study to page 43, that is a good start in diagnosing step 1. These 51 pages will get you ready to see if you're ready to move on. Let's take a look at the first sentence on page 44.
In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic.
It tells you why it is so important to be thorough in your study to this point. From this study, we can separate the alcoholic from the non-alcoholic, which is so vital to the success of your group and AA as a whole.
Now, take the test. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely.
How many of you promised you'd never drink again? It appears you failed to manage that decision, so your life is unmanageable where alcohol is concerned.
Or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take.
How many of you cannot start drinking without getting drunk? It would appear that you too are powerless over alcohol. Step 1.
If that is the case, you may be suffering from an illness.
Chronic alcoholism of the hopeless variety.
Which only a spiritual experience will conquer.
How many meetings must you attend to have a spiritual experience? Or how many steps must you take to have this blessed promise become a reality in your life?
Page 44 through page 57 will open the door for you to be able to consider your own conception of the God of your understanding.
Page 58 answers that stupid comment we hear too often in meetings. I don't know how it works. The first sentence tells us how it works. I lost my place. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. In other words, we need to follow the clear-cut directions in the Big Book.
The program of Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual program. On page 59, we will find the first of several prayers. We asked his protection and care with a complete abandon. There are one or more prayers for each and every step from step 3 through step 12, which reminds us that the God of our understanding is the source of our recovery. We learn to invite him to be the solution to all of our problems.
On page 62, we are told what our real problem is: selfishness and self-centeredness. But we can never see it without some method of revealing the truth to us. So we make a decision to do precisely what our sponsor suggests and announce that decision in the prayer presented on page 63. This prayer is the invitation to God to come into our lives.
One of the beautiful things about the Big Book is that it will tell us when to take a step, how to take that step, what the results or promises of taking the step will be, and provides us with the prayers that make certain we are inviting the God of our understanding to be very involved in our recovery.
The last sentence on page 63 tells us that we now have to get busy and take the rest of the steps.
Steps 4 and 5 are diagnostic steps to learn if what they told us on page 62
Selfishness, self-centeredness
is true for us. The clear-cut directions for step 4 are found from pages 64 through 71, and there are 5 prayers for step 4.
On page 75, we find the clear-cut directions for step 5 and the 2 fifth-step prayers.
On page 76, we find the direction for step 6, which is nothing more than a commitment to God that we will become students and practitioners of the rest of the Big Book, and there we will find the 6th step prayer.
On page 76, we find the 7th step prayer, which is to be prayed after we have done our parts of step 6 of step, which is to be prayed after we have done our part of steps 4 through 6. Now we ask God to please do your part by making me different. This prayer is the completion of the prayer we started on page 63. This is where we find the amen and finish the prayer. This is a cycle of 5 steps, which started with the 3rd step prayer and ends with the 7th step prayer.
On page 76, we will be most pleased to learn that if we have carefully followed the directions in taking step 4, that step 8 is all but a done deal.
From page 76 to page 83 are the directions for taking step 9, and the 4 9th step prayers are there.
Having carefully followed the path the first 100 laid down for us, we have now had a spiritual awakening / experience and have joined the first 100 as recovered alcoholics. The 9th step promises describe that blessed event.
And on page 64, we take the first action to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. By the time we get to page 83, we have recovered. We have joined the first 100. We have been given the power that we lacked to survive alcoholism. Carefully following the clear-cut directions outlined in just 20 pages of our basic text produces the miracle of recovery.
We are now to start our spiritual growth, and that occurs in steps 10, 11, and 12.
The clear-cut directions for step 10 are contained in the paragraph on page 84, beginning with, "This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory."
A running start for learning how to communicate with God, with the God of your understanding, is very adequately covered on pages 86, 87, and 88.
And now that we have received the power, it is our primary job to pass that on to the next newcomer God puts in our life. The clear-cut directions for sponsorship are contained in chapter 7. but you won't find the 12-step prayer until you have reached the last page of the basic text. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick.
Here you have it. So utterly simple, yet so gobbled in our meetings. I challenge you to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. The simplest guide that I follow in working with others is, if it isn't in the big book, they don't need to be exposed to it.
If you're encouraged to wait until you have a better understanding of what our program is about, I have one question for you. How well did you like sex before you tried it? Well, you won't know a damn thing about recovery either until you have taken the action of the steps precisely as they were given to us.
Absolutely.
And that is our foundations meeting. And we're now going to open for comments, questions, whatever feedback you have. Does anybody have anything they want to say? Or I can call on people because I know your names. Hi,
And she
Sharon.
will.
Come on in, Sharon.
Hi, I'm just getting some privacy. Hi, my name's Sharon. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm so glad to be here. And it's so refreshing to hear this stuff because the meetings are so not, you know. I spoke the other night and in Hawaii. And I started out with the ED, I said, I am recovered. And I said, I know the ED word is sometimes, a little bit difficult for people to understand. And I said, but, it's right in the title of our book. And I explained that it was, and contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual fitness and, whatever. And then I explained about how, my first recovery, I had 2 years, and I, went to meetings, and I met this man, and we had a lot of fun, and we went to, we'd go to the meeting, 6:30, 7:30 meeting in the morning, we'd go to breakfast, and then with a couple people, and then we'd go to the community center and play ping pong. I wouldn't get home till 11 o'clock in the morning, and we'd have a wonderful time, and I wouldn't drink, and it was right before, 3 weeks before my 2-year anniversary. Met a lot of people, very social. It was wonderful. Went to a bunch of meetings. Here comes the resentment. Guess who doesn't have a toolbox because never opened the book? Guess who doesn't have a sponsor? It's 2 years of sobriety, but I've been sitting in meetings, country club AA, and I drank. Thank God I only drank for 7 months. People go out for 7 years. It's 17 years. Some people never come back. And so I explained, I said that in my share, and I said, people say don't drink and just go to meetings. That is not AA. If people tell you that, that is not the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. The first woman who shared said, just come to meetings. We will love you. Just come to meetings. Just go to a whole bunch of meetings and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And I'm like, so I think some people just really don't know. They have been told that over and over again. And I'm telling you, my quote unquote, she's not really my sponsor, but she's, I do call her. And she said that on and on, just don't drink, just don't drink, just don't drink. And I'd go out of my mind if I just didn't drink. I would probably commit suicide if I just did not drink and did not have AA. Like I said, you put an alcoholic on an island, there's still an alcoholic. They don't have alcohol, but there's still an alcoholic. So I am glad that we have the 12 steps, and I'm glad that we have the 12 the 12 traditions and the concepts and all of that. And I understand it from day one that the steps are not in the 12 traditions. And but I know I used to go to step meetings, and people, that's all they did, is they go to step meetings. They thought that they were doing steps. Those people had 10, 12, 15, 25 years of sobriety, and they would just go to step meetings, and they thought that that's what they were doing the program. I try to convince them that that's not true. You actually have to write down this stuff, so I really appreciate it. I have not gone to a foundations meeting in a long time. And, you know, just, and you know what really breaks my heart are the statistics. They break my heart every time I hear them. What are we? I don't even think we're at 17% anymore. You know, it's just real. I don't think we're under, I don't know what we're, I don't even look anymore. But anyway, because how could you ever tell? But as we said at the beginning of the meeting, thank God for Zoom, because at least we're reaching people. You know, if we are at least, you know, reaching people and telling them our experience, strength, and hope, and giving them hope, then you know, so all we can do is spread hope. So thank you, and you guys are doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Johnny, you unmuted.
Johnny, you got something to share? You unmuted yourself.
What's up? What's up?
There you go. You unmuted. Did you want to jump in?
Well, I agree about going to the big book without a doubt. That I believe without a doubt that's how you take the steps. So I agree with everything. I agree with everything said. Although I hadn't gone through it like this, where everything brought up, I think it's a good way to bring it across. But I believe in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous without a doubt.
Thank you. Nikki, you want to share anything? And thank you for jumping up into service. I think this was the first time you heard a foundations meeting, so you didn't know what you were getting into.
She's muted.
I honestly do not know what to say. I have been reading and I have sponsor and I'm working on the steps, but some of the steps pull on your heartstrings, and it's not easy to revisit your own life, past life, because you can't do anything about what happened, and all you can do is do something for the present, because tomorrow is too far away. We still don't know what's going to happen. So for me, it's basically you stand before the mirror and you say the truth. You see what you see and you state what you see, because that's how honest you have to be with yourself. You cannot hide under any step, any prayer. You have to be so honest that you shed your old skin and you discover who you are, where you are, and hopefully with the hope and continuation of the process, you move forward to where you need to be. So for me, it's taken a little bit too long on step 4, and it actually put me into quite a sad state of mind, because you look back and you see how your life was changed or how it was affected. Whether you did alcohol in the beginning or did alcohol later, doesn't matter. Eventually, you became an alcoholic. And that's why these steps are so important to take one at a time and really get out the information from your own soul and your own heart, so you can be once done with it and move forward. So the problem where it says in the book about quicksand, they're absolutely correct. When we get stuck on a step and the reality of it is too shocking or too difficult to absorb, yeah, you kind of roll around in quicksand. But you have to have that higher power above you to help you come out of that. And I wholeheartedly believe in the book. I wholeheartedly believe in the process, and I'm not giving up. I'm going to finish everything that I need to finish and be where I need to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. And thanks again for your service tonight.
Absolutely.
Lisa?
Oh. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic. Sharon and Nikki and everybody, it was really great to hear you. Nikki, when I found when I got blocked, what helped me was I just picked up the phone and called my sponsors and just talked. And more times than not, pretty soon after that, something came. God put something in my head, or I was looking at it totally differently. Also asking God, help me see the truth. You know, that set aside prayer. And all the prayers helped me a lot. And, you know, listening to Sharon, oh boy, can I relate. I mean, in my area, you hardly ever hear anything about the big book. I mean, there might be one sitting up for the raffle, you know, but it's really not talked about. And those two things, God and the big book, the directions and the answers to my alcoholism, those are the two things I stayed away from. I pick and chose. I just went to meetings, and it was just talking about the problem, not the solution. So I can totally relate there. And I mean, and not being in the big book, not having a God of my understanding kept me drinking. I mean, I had some dry times, a lot of it in my adult life, but I always went back to drinking. And it wasn't until I started with my sponsors and the big book and finding that relationship with God, you know, that's when things started changing in my life. That's when I started changing. And I'm forever grateful. And, you know, Nikki, just keep at it. And like I said, keep talking. Keep talking to your sponsor. Keep talking to God. And you'll get there. Stay in the big book. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. And I do want to say this was Lisa's first time on this side of the chair doing the presenting and not the listening, and you did a fabulous job. Thank you for your service and stepping up tonight, Lisa.
Absolutely. Good evening, family. My name is Jamie, very grateful recovered alcoholic. See how we sucker you into service every time, Lisa? Just saying it like it is. Great job, ladies. I love this foundations meeting, and I wasn't presented with this meeting in this format until, I don't know, I was like 29 years sober, something like that. And it really gave me an entirely different way of looking at the book. And some people, I'll be working with others, and I'll say, go to this page. Let's take a look at this. Go to this page. Let's take a look at this. And they're like, how do you know that? And it's because of studying the book like this. But here again, you know, we present some pretty hard numbers. And actually what it talked about, of there being about 3% for less than 5 years of recovery today in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it, you know, those numbers are probably true, because when I got sober, they said that for every 10 of us in the room, one of us would probably stay sober. Does that mean Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work? Absolutely not. But there's a place in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll give you a hint. It's on page 58 in how it works. And it talks about there are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. So a cannot is someone that was born with such a severe mental disability, like maybe an autistic child or something like that, that they can't, they don't have the capacity. That puts most of the rest of us in the class of being a will not. Nope, ain't gonna do that. I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and I learned that there was a whole bunch of things that I wanted to do I couldn't do anymore, and I was going to have to do a whole bunch of things that I didn't want to do. And you know, the result of that is it's changed my life. It's changed my spiritual DNA. And that's the miracle of this whole thing. I'm not the same guy that I used to be so long ago. Am I capable of still being a horse's ass? Absolutely. Why? Because I still have defects of character. But I love the way that this is presented, and I'm going to talk about that fourth step for just a second, because as it said in this meeting, 4 and 5 are a discovery process. What am I discovering? I'm discovering the truth about me. No, I can't change a gosh darn thing that ever happened to me. You know what I can change? I can change my perspective on how I look at what happened to me. I can change my perspective and I can heal. But I can't do any of that without the willingness to take a look at it. Oh, goes back to the cannot or will not. Willingness is required. And it's the only way I'm going to heal. It's the only way I'm going to get to the other side. It's the only way that I am going to give people who committed unforgivable acts to me forgiveness in my heart. Now, just because I forgive someone who did unforgivable things, does that absolve them from what they did? Nope. But guess what? Show me in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous where it says I get to be the judge of anybody. This is a pathway for me to get rid of this right here, emotional baggage. We carry that emotional baggage around with us like it is our best friend. And yet that emotional baggage keeps us a prisoner. So my pathway to freedom is forgiveness. That here again doesn't absolve them of what they did, but you know what happens when I give forgiveness? It means I no longer have to live with the pain of what they did. So I hear a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous say, well, what was my part in that? I was a little kid. I was a victim. You know what my part in it is? It's so simple. Because when I became an adult, I had choices and I had opportunities to get help and recover from those things, and didn't. And I kept myself an emotional prisoner to it. Therefore, that's my part in it. It's really kind of simple. I'm given, you know, here again, one of the things that was presented tonight, there is a series of prayers, actions, and promises that go with each individual step. So, you know, now I'm one of those with a third grade Jethro Bodine education. Trish hates it when I say that, but it's true. But I'm the squirrel on the bouncy branch waiting to jump to the next branch, and I figured this out. If I say the prayers that are in the book and I follow the actions that come after the prayers, I will get to experience the promises that correlate with that. And I don't get to blame anybody for my life if I am not willing to take the action. Uh-oh, went right back to, am I a cannot or a will not? I am a will today. I am an I am today because of this work. It has changed every aspect of my life, and it shows me how to clean house, and it shows me how to continue to help others and how to get on with the business of living. Because if I'm not living and I'm sitting in my own self-pity, I am dying. I am killing myself one thought at a time. Those are all choices. So when I do this work, and I love this, and I'm going to touch on this real quick. A lot of people say, oh, the program's over at page 103. Well, I take issue with that. A lot of people say, well, I ain't got a wife. I don't need that chapter. I ain't got a family. I don't need that chapter. I ain't got a job. I don't need that chapter. But here's the thing about those pre-Al-Anon chapters. They are still the program, and they are about me practicing my program of recovery in the places that matter the most in my life. So no, the program's not over at page 103. This is where I start to put it into practice. The other way that I know it's not over until page 103 is because we don't come to our 12-step prayer until page 164. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do for the man who is still sick. So I got a choice when I wake up in the morning. I can say, Father, how can I serve you, and how can I serve your children today? Or I can say, well, God, I don't like the way you're doing this, and you better send someone to serve me. Because don't you know who I think I am? And when I do that, what I'm doing is I am separating myself from God. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So I'm doing 3 really important things there. I'm still seeking. What am I seeking? The knowledge well, I'm continuing to seek to improve that conscious contact. Where did I get that conscious contact? Steps 3 through 9. That's where the development of the relationship with God came in. So I'm seeking to improve that. And I'm also asking God for the knowledge of his will for me is, because I know what the knowledge of my will for me is. All I got to do is look at that 4th column in the 4th step and see myself and read pages 60 through 62 and the selfishness and the self-centered me trying to orchestrate everybody else's life. That's what my will is. So I got to ask God for what his will is, just the knowledge of it. It's up to me to take the action on the knowledge that God gives. Then there's something else very specific I have to ask him. I have to ask him to empower me with his power to carry it out. Because in step 1, I gave up my power when I admitted I was powerless. I'll share this with you. Little controversy in an association of Alcoholics Anonymous and some disgruntled alcoholics this morning. And I'm responsible for carrying their message, and I did because it was my responsibility. But I wrote this in our chat. I can only tell you one thing that is the way that I live my life, and it's my belief. While it is important to have acknowledgement in this arena pertaining to the situation that was at hand, there is also a certain amount of humility that comes from doing something anonymously and not seeking credit. I think it's important that we be careful to not let our pride and ego replace humility. If I'm seeking accolades and going, oh, Trish, you did so good. Or if I'm going to somebody telling them what I did and how proud of myself I am, and I'm seeking accolades, I'm seeking the wrong answers, and I will be disappointed every time. But when I seek the guidance of my Creator, and I stay in alignment with the guidance of my Creator, you know what? It doesn't matter what any of you think about me. Because while I may live to serve you, I don't live for your approval anymore. And that's what this whole process of taking these steps will do. It will align me with God to where I seek to do His will, to serve Him and to serve His children, and to stop serving myself. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, still to hear from, it says Zoom user, I don't have a name for you. Do you want to come in and share a little bit? And it's also okay understanding sometimes people at work, or they're wrestling to put kids away, or they're just not in a position where they can share. So no pressure.
Under pressure. We'll sing a little David Bowie in the meantime.
I'm Trish and I'm an alcoholic. Enough of David Bowie, thank you. I was one of those who came in the 80s where it was talking about we had ignored the process of focusing on our solution and drifted into group therapy. And for years, well, not years, but early on, when people asked me where I was going and I wasn't yet comfortable in my skin to say, I'm going to an AA meeting, I said, I'm going to a support group, because that's what it felt like. Even though AA never has and never should have been just seen as a support group. I love how it talks about, I don't know, it doesn't matter if I can find the page, where it says, we are here because of the steps that Bill took, not because of the meetings that he went to. And yeah, meetings are important. Meetings is where I connect with you guys. Meetings is where I find people who have traveled this journey ahead of me and who can show me what they did, so that I can then learn from you and then show somebody else what I did behind me. But I've got to also focus on doing that work and not just showing up at a meeting. I can't stand the phrase, and didn't come up here, I can't stand the phrase meeting makers make it, because it's come so far out of connotation. Just sitting in a meeting is not going to get me sober any more than me going to McDonald's is going to make me become a hamburger.
Or a hamburglar.
Yeah. But, I was one of those who came in, and the first person I asked to be my sponsor, she said, nope. And I got my first resentment in AA. And she immediately followed that up with, because I know you too well and you know me, and I know if I'm your sponsor, you're going to live in my back pocket and you're not going to spread out and go and meet anybody else. And you need to get other people to talk to. And I realized she was right. But even then, her comments to me were, but until you get a sponsor, read step 1 in the 12 and 12 every day, or every day for 30 days. I read that until I had it practically memorized. It didn't mean a thing to me. I didn't know what I was reading because it wasn't the directions that were in the book. And, you know, I can't tell you how many sponsors I went through. I think I need 2 hands to count all the sponsors, and none of them really got me into book work. We talked a lot. We did a little bit of writing, but none of them got me in the book. And I often wonder, how different would my sobriety have been if I had known or been presented with the program the way it is, the way that we did tonight? But at the same time, I don't go back and say, woe is me, I didn't have a good sponsor, I didn't do this, I didn't get that. Because if I had had that then, I wouldn't be who I am today. I would have been on a totally different journey. And, you know, today I can say I like who I am and where I am. But when I look, especially at the way we look at those promises, and it's hard to read them the way that we do with that phrase in front of it, but it puts them into such a different light. When I had a few drinks, all of those things seemed to be real. I thought I could make decisions. I thought I could make good decisions. I thought I had it all together. I thought I knew how to talk to you. But, you know, having a drink and not having a drink really made a difference in what my world was, whether I was going to be really able to relate to somebody else, and certainly whether I was going to be able to talk to you. And I love how it touches a little bit on each one of the steps, and it points out in Bill's story all those important spots. My drinking wasn't continuous, but my wife was on my ass about it. I started getting jittery in the morning, and it became a necessity. We can watch Bill's progression, and as we watched Bill's progression in this foundations meeting, I go back and I remember my progression. And my progression wasn't the same as Bill's, Bob's, or other people in the rooms, but my progression was my progression. And I knew at the end, that question that Ebby asked Bill, why don't you come up with your own conception of God? Why don't you choose your own conception of God? The first time that really resonated with me, I got goosebumps. Because I thought I was stuck with the God I had as a childhood. And I couldn't get sober on that God. I didn't understand that God. And I've heard it in these rooms a whole lot. You know, I was told a whole lot growing up in church who God was, being told what to believe, who to believe, and to behave myself. And then I was told, but you need to have a relationship with God, but nobody could teach me how to do that. I learned how to have that relationship with God through these steps and through these rooms. I found that power. I found that power. I found that relationship with God. And that relationship is what made all the difference for me. And yeah, I learned how to study this book and not just read it. I have said for years to people, it's not the great American novel. You don't read it for cover to cover and then put it down and say, oops, all done. I learned how to study the book and not read it. And I'll go back and I'll study it again and I'll study it again. And I read it with colored pencils, not with markers, because markers bleed through and I don't know which page I'm marking on. And then I got a new book and I started marking off just 3 things. I mark off the prayers, the promises, and the actions, and each one has its own color. So when I'm looking at a book, those are the only 3 colors I'm going to see, and I know that's something that I've got to do. It's the prayer I've got to take, the action I've got to take, and what those promises are that I'm going to find through those steps. And when I first came in, I thought really the only prayers that were in the book was the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer, because those were the only ones that clearly stated, we said this prayer, we said something like this. And a guy in my home group my in-person home group at home started talking about there's 120 something prayers in the book. And I started looking at it. And you know how many single one-liners there are that says we asked God? Or we ask. And most of those sentences that say we ask, that's a prayer. It's only a one-line prayer. It's not a full paragraph prayer, so it gets hidden, it gets missed, but it's in there. And it's through the studying and the willingness to pick up and study the book, not just read it, but study it as if my life depends on it, because it does. And study it so that when the next person comes along, I can teach them how to study it like their life depends on it, because it does. And then watching the light go on, and all of a sudden, hey, somebody's home. The lights are on and somebody's home. And for so many years, the lights were on, nobody was in there. And now when I work with other people, I love that moment when all of a sudden their lights come on. And not just is the lights there, but I know they're in there and they're getting it. And that's the joy that I get when I'm able to work with someone and their God makes an appearance to the point that they recognize, I know what this is, I feel this. And that's powerful stuff. And that's stuff that I wouldn't see or be able to experience if I was still living out of just the 12 and 12, or just out of phone conversations without having, I have a 3rd edition. It doesn't look like I ever opened it, but things are underlined in it, so I know I did. My 4th edition last year, I had brought it home and gave it to my sister. She had to glue the pages back in because they were all falling out. So I'm certainly in that book a whole lot more than I used to be. And that's where I'm learning, and that's where I'm growing, and that's the knowledge and experience that I can then take on to other people. And I have rambled on way too long. Anybody else have something quick they want to come in with before we close out?
Culture shock.
Okay, so we will go ahead and close out in our usual fashion. And what we do in our meetings, since we're not in the same room to stand around the table, we're not even in the same time zone a lot of times. Tonight, we're not. Because we can't hold hands around the table, we hold our hands up in the screen. And that's the way that we pray with and for each other. And we do that in this room a lot. And we'll go ahead and we'll take a moment of silence for those still suffering inside and outside of these rooms, especially those who may die tonight, either because they haven't found their way to us, or because they found their way and they weren't ready or they weren't willing and they walked back out. So we'll take a moment of silence and we'll follow that with the Lord's Prayer. So here's your moment. Thank you. And who brings us from shame to grace if we let him? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Great meeting. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Nikki.
Good to see you, Johnny.
Thanks for coming, Johnny.
You're muted, Johnny.